Imagine hearing the name Dracula and instantly picturing a vampire with sharp teeth, a black cape, and a creepy castle. But what if I told you the real Dracula was not a monster from a storybook, but a real man whose life was even scarier than any movie? His name was Vlad the Impaler, a prince from the 1400s. And his story is one of power, war, fear, and a legacy that has survived for centuries. Today we are going back in time, deep into the mountains of Eastern Europe, to a place called Transylvania. It is a land full of forests, castles, and legends, and in the middle of it all lived Vlad, a child who grew up surrounded by danger. When he was very young, he and his brother were taken as hostages by the Ottoman Empire. Imagine being a kid and suddenly being forced to live with your enemies. Vlad learned early in life that the world was cruel and that power was everything. When Vlad finally returned home as an adult, he wasn't the same boy who had left. He had become sharp, tough, and determined. His land, Wallachia, was full of chaos. Enemies attacked from outside, nobles fought from inside, and everyone wanted the throne. Vlad believed the only way to rule was through fear, and he took that idea to a whole new level. Vlad became famous, or maybe infamous, for one method of punishment, impalement. It was a painful and terrifying way to die, and he used it on thousands of enemies. He didn't do it secretly. He wanted the world to see. It was his way of saying, if you mess with me or my land, this is what happens. One story says that a group of invaders entered Wallachia and suddenly stopped. In front of them were thousands of people on stakes, covering a whole field. The invaders were so afraid, they turned around and left. Vlad didn't even have to fight that day. His reputation fought for him. But here's the twist that surprises many people. To some, Vlad wasn't a monster. To his supporters, he was a hero who protected his home from foreign powers. He fought against the Ottomans many times, trying to keep Wallachia free. Some Romanian stories describe him as a strong leader who punished criminals and tried to bring order to a chaotic world. So how did this real brutal prince become Dracula the vampire? Years later, storytellers in Europe began writing about his cruelty, and these stories spread everywhere. Then, in the 1800s, an author named Bram Stoker wrote a book called Dracula. He used Vlad's nickname, Dracula, which originally meant son of the dragon, and turned it into the vampire character we know today. Stoker mixed bits of history with fiction, and suddenly Vlad the Impaler had become an immortal creature of the night. As time passed, the legend grew. Movies, books, and shows turned Dracula into one of the most famous characters in the world. But behind that character is still the real man, a prince who ruled through fear, surrounded by betrayal, war, and legends. Some historians say the stories of his cruelty were exaggerated by his enemies. Others say he truly was as terrifying as the tales describe. The truth might be somewhere in the middle. What we do know is that Vlad changed history, shaped a legend, and left a mark so deep that people still talk about him more than 500 years later. So when you picture Dracula standing in his castle, cloak blowing in the wind, maybe imagine Vlad standing behind that image too. Not a vampire, but a man whose life was darker and more complicated than any horror story. A man who inspired fear, respect, and one of the world's most famous myths. That is the real Dracula, and his legacy continues to haunt history.